Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Kopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinanda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikhaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. All glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to the simple devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 18, The Residents of Jambudvipa Offer Prayers, Text 20. Sa vai pati syad akutobaya swayam samantataha pati Bayaturam Janam Sa Eka Evatarata Mito Bayam Nevat Malabad Adi Mandite Param Savai Syad Akutobaya Swayam Samantata Patipayaturam Janam Seka Eve Taratamito Bayam Naivat malabad adimanyate param. Savaipati syad akutobaya swayam. Samantata patibayaturam janam. Seka eve taratamito bayam. Naivat malavat adimanyate param. Savaipati syad akutobaya swayam. Samantata patibayaturam janam. Sa eka eve taratamito bayam. Naivat malabad adimanyate param. Saha, he, why, indeed, but the he, a husband, syat would be, akutaha, bayaha, who is not fearful of anyone, swayam, self-sufficient, samantataha, entirely, pati, maintains, baya aturam, who is very afraid, janam, a person, saha, therefore he, ekaha, one, eva, only, ita rata, otherwise, mitaha, from one another, vayam, fear, na, not, eva, indeed, atmalabat, then the attainment of you, adi, great, tur, manyate, is accepted, param, other thing. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He alone who is never afraid, but who, on the contrary, gives complete shelter to all fearful persons, can actually become a husband and protector. Therefore, my Lord, you are the only husband, and no one else can claim this position. If you were not the only husband, you would be afraid of others. Therefore, persons learned in all Vedic literature accept only your lordship as everyone's master. They think no one else a better husband and protector than you. Purport. Here the meaning of husband or guardian is clearly explained. People want to become a husband, a guardian, a governor, or a political leader without knowing the actual meaning of such a superior position. There are many people all over the world, indeed throughout the universe, who claim for some time that they are husbands, political leaders, or guardians. But in due course of time, the Supreme Lord desires their removal from their posts, and their careers are immediately finished. Therefore, those who are actually learned and advanced in spiritual life do not accept any leader, husband, or maintainer other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna personally states in Bhagavad Gita 1866, Aham tam sarvapapebhyo mokshishyami. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Krishna is not afraid of anyone. On the contrary, everyone is afraid of Krishna. Therefore, he can actually give protection to a subordinate living entity. Since so-called leaders or dictators are completely under the control of material nature, they can never give complete protection to others. Although they claim this ability due to false prestige. Nate viduḥ svārtha-gatiṁ hi viṣṇum. People do not know that real advancement in life consists of accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one's master. Instead of deceiving themselves and others by pretending to be all-powerful, all political leaders, husbands, and guardians should spread the Krishna consciousness movement so that everyone can learn how to surrender to Krishna, the Supreme Husband. So, do you think close that door, please? Why? Well, we don't need any extra sound effects. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshuvan Malitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Kridavachalam Pangam Langate Girim Yakipatam Hambande Shri Gurun Dinataradam Panchakabdribishta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavane Bhyo Vaishnavi Bhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So Krishna is the supreme protector, and as this verse is saying, only husband, protector, because everyone else is, you could say, especially, definitely, the conditioned souls are fallible. They're imperfect. And therefore, how can they give shelter to anybody if they're imperfect? Of course, within the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and our Vaishnava acharyas, they say that we also need to surrender to a guru. It's not that we just surrender to Krishna. That's not our philosophy. If people want that to be their philosophy, then they should join another movement. And there's plenty of them to join. There's plenty other movements that say a guru is not necessary. It's just you and God. But Krishna's system that he chose to set up is that we do accept a guru, right? Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevya. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says we should approach humbly a spiritual master and inquire, render service, because they can enlighten us because they have seen the truth. Tattvadarshanaha, they have seen the truth, therefore they could help us. So we have to approach. But depending on how we approach the guru will reciprocate. We cannot cheat the spiritual master. In other words, depending on what we desire, depending on what we want, depending on what we're trying to achieve, that will definitely have an effect on what we get. Ye yata mam prapadyate tamstataiva bhajamyam. As they surrender to me, Krishna says, I'll reciprocate. Similarly with the spiritual master, as they surrender to me, I shall reciprocate, right? Like recently we saw His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami, and I was speaking to him, just asking him how was his travels, his West Coast travels, and he was saying how he went to South America, and anyways, I was telling him we're very happy that he visited here, and hopefully come back again soon. And then while we were speaking, there was one devotee, young Indian boy, and he asked Mukunda Charana Prabhu, because Mukunda Charana Prabhu was there, he said, "Can you take a picture?" And with means the boy wanted to stand next to Jayadvaita Swami. And so Mukunda Charana Prabhu did that, and Maharaj was standing there, and the boy was there. And there was like three boys in a row, who wanted a picture with Maharaj. And I also saw a little girl. I mean, she was very young. She was like, I don't know, 7 years old or something. She had a book, and she was going around like an autograph book. I don't know where she got this idea from, but she was going around to all the swamis and said, "Can you sign my autograph book?" Which is nice. But anyways, so the boys wanted a picture, and Maharaj was standing there, and he agreed. And so then I asked Jayadvaita Swami, I said, "Maharaj, how do you feel about this picture taking? What do you think about this?" And he said, "I just learned to accept it." And somehow or other, he coined it as very much of a somehow or other. A lot of Indian people like to do that with him. Whatever. Could have been Chinese people. Could have been, so many people. But somehow a lot of Indian people like to take pictures with him, devotees. So then I said, "Oh, what about the Americans?" And he said, "Yeah, they're starting to catch on as well." American devotees. So then I was mentioning how Shivaram Swami, one of his godbrothers, not his godbrothers, one of his disciples was telling me how Shivaram Swami just doesn't like it. He thinks it's, I don't know if the details why he doesn't like it I'm forgetting, but I don't know if he thinks it's inappropriate or just too whimsical or whatever, but he doesn't like it. But anyways, Jayadvaita Swami was saying, "Oh, I just accept it." And I was saying how I was at one festival, and one brahmachari, I saw him, there was a sannyasi sitting there listening to kirtan, and then one brahmachari went up to the sannyasi and said, "Maharaj, can I take a picture with us? Selfie?" And then this Maharaj, he said, "No." As I saw it, I thought it was pretty funny. But anyways, Jayadvaita Swami was saying that sometimes that's all people want. They just want a picture. That's it. He said they don't want spiritual knowledge. They don't want anything else. They just want a picture. Which, that's not the function of a guru, just to, I have a picture with him, right? Or I have a picture of him and I put him on my wall. Or I have a picture with him and that's it. But the function of the guru, the main function, actually, is to give spiritual knowledge. The guru may make us feel good, he may not, at times. The guru may be a very good fatherly figure, right? In other words, we may see him in so many ways. People see him, this is my fatherly figure, or sometimes also with our spiritual, with the god brothers of our spiritual master, we may think, "Oh, this is like uncle, right? This is my uncle," and there might be a bit of emotional feelings there, right? Uncle Dravida Prabhu or something. That's fine, but the real function of spiritual uncles, of the spiritual father, the spiritual master, is to give knowledge. That's the main function of the guru. So it's a good thing to remember. like it's being mentioned here, these people, they claim to be husbands, they claim to be guardians, they claim to be governors and political leaders, but the main purpose or the main function of these people should be to teach people, to educate them, and to guide them in the right direction, not off a cliff. But we see that people they're in ignorance. So how can they guide anybody? They're in very dark ignorance. So the mention of fear here in the verse and purport says, the verse, if you were not only the husband, he alone who is never afraid, but who on the contrary gives complete shelter to all fearful persons, can actually become a husband and protector. No one else can claim this position. If you are not the only husband, you would be afraid of others. Therefore, persons learn in all Vedic literature accept only your lordship as everyone's master. So people are and as Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport, let's see. Therefore, Krishna is not afraid of anyone. On the contrary, everyone is afraid of Krishna. So Krishna is not afraid of everyone, or not afraid of anyone. Everyone's afraid of him. They say fear personified is afraid of Krishna. So similarly, the spiritual master is fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. Like Srila Prabhupada's name, Abhay Charanaravinda. Right? He's fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. So to be a spiritual master, which Srila Prabhupada wants everybody to be, or for those who are accepting a spiritual master, the spiritual master must be fearless. And devotees also everyone should come to the point of being fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. It says that one of the main functions of a sannyasi, and of course the guru doesn't have to be a sannyasi, it could be in another order, but one of the main qualities of a sannyasi that they must have is they must be fearless. They cannot be afraid of anything. Now, one thing that, but there is one thing. One thing is that the devotees, even the spiritual master, should be afraid of Maya. They should be terrified, actually, of Maya, of the illusory energy, of falling into Maya. All the spiritual master, no matter how exalted they are, no matter how exalted anyone perceives them to be, should be afraid of Maya. And the devotees, their disciples, and all devotees should be afraid of Maya. Because the illusory energy has the power and has successfully bewildered many people throughout history. And sometimes, anyways, I remember there was anyways, it was many years ago, and I was on book distribution, and there was one girl. It was in a mall, and there was one girl, and she was selling something. I forgot, like one of those kiosks, and we were walking in the mall, and she was attractive by material standards. Of course, they say that the women in this world, in comparison to the women in the heavenly planets, they say are like frogs. But anyways, by material standards, she was attractive, and I felt that she wanted to sell me something, and that because that's what she was doing. She was selling stuff. And anyways, I kind of made a wide, what do you call? Wide berth. Yeah, wide berth like this, and was avoiding her, and she said, "What, are you scared of me?" And I said, "Yes." But she wasn't offended by that. She was, anyways. And I kept on going. Yeah, she was kind of charmed with it,
She noticed you more.
Yeah. But yeah, we should be afraid. Maya means that which is not. Means that there are all these type of misconceptions, illusions within the mind that act to help us forget Krishna. So Maya could mean different things for different people. For a heterosexual man, Maya is a woman, and for a woman, heterosexual, yeah, woman, man is Maya. In other words, of course, you could say, are things Maya in and of themselves? Well, like for example, money. You say, oh, it's just Maya. We don't touch it at all. Well, it could be used in Krishna's service, so it's Krishna's energy. See, but the real problem is seeing it separate from Krishna. That's the problem. It's not the object, right? It's how we're perceiving it. Like one Christian man said, the only problem with the world, because people think, oh, this world evil and this and that, and it's just everything's designed, perfectly designed, just to take you straight to hell, right? It's almost like the whole world's like a big trap just to take you to hell, right? He said, but the real problem is, with the world is that I'm a sinner. That's the real problem, that I'm attracted to it. Because as soon as one's not attracted to it, what's the problem? You could see, what's the temptation? But the problem is the attraction to it. So the process of Krishna consciousness is training us how to come to the point where we're just not attracted. So we lose more and more attraction, right? We're losing attraction, but we have to come to the point where we just lost all attraction. But the problem is we're not living in some mode of goodness culture, to say the least. It is the exact opposite. And as time goes on, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Like the advertisement industry, just worse and worse and worse. It's just, it's like he spends so much time chanting Hare Krishna and reading and this and that, and right, trying to purify yourself and go out on the road and driving by, see some billboards that are just tamasic, rajasic, disturbing, meant to ignite the most base, lowest urges within the human beings. So it's a battle, right? Because we're purifying ourselves, and then we go out and then dealing with so much stuff, right? Or even the mind's advertisements, right? Stuff bubbling up. So it's a bit of a challenge. And therefore, we may have to do more, actually. We may have to chant some extra rounds. We may have to do some extra reading. We may have to do some extra praying. It's like Srila Prabhupada mentioned that, actually. He said, actually Bhakti Tirtha Swami mentioned it once. He said, chanting 16 rounds a day, of course, depends on, right, the quality of the rounds, but he said this is just like bringing us up to the mark where we're able to stay our head above the water line, right, Maya, right? Which he was indicating maybe we should chant a little more, right? Of course, again, it's the quality too. You may chant 64 bad rounds and 16 perfect rounds, but Srila Prabhupada also mentioned this. He mentioned it once to a disciple, Hayagriva. Hayagriva was having a hard time in his spiritual life, and it's in his book Vrindavan Days. Said he was struggling with sinful desires and activities, and then Srila Prabhupada, I won't go over the whole conversation, but Srila Prabhupada said, well, I advised all of you to chant 64 rounds a day, and now you're complaining to me that you're having a hard time being Krishna conscious, you're having a hard time experiencing the higher pleasure, experiencing Krishna, and therefore you're struggling with sinful activities. But I advise you to chant 64 rounds. Now you're complaining. Which is an interesting point. Which Srila Prabhupada was saying that, making the point that the chanting helps one avoid. That's the main way, actually. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. It's the main way to avoid all different types of inauspicious things of this age, sinful activity. Just like, let's say one goes out for preaching, book distribution, whatever it may be, some type of preaching. And who knows, let's say that a man goes out for preaching, and some circumstances, some perfect circumstances to run away from Krishna consciousness with some attractive young woman arises. How is a person supposed to avoid that? Just by preaching alone? Preaching, of course, gives a taste, that's for sure. Without a doubt. Very high taste, right? The most high. But this ability to preach and ability to experience the higher taste from preaching comes from early morning sadhana, early morning hearing and chanting about Krishna. That is as Vaisheshpur says, right, the overflow of our happiness and Krishna consciousness. It flows out into our preaching. And then the preaching will also experience a higher taste. But if we're not experiencing a higher taste from sadhana, and we go out and we preach, we may be experiencing some higher taste, sometimes maybe, but it's shaky, because we're not experiencing higher taste with sadhana, spiritual practices. And then when Maya presents herself, because it does happen, a person may just lose it, just like a Jamil. He completely lost it. He wasn't going out to chase after he wasn't going out woman hunting. He was going out collecting firewood. But he got completely bewildered. So the way we're able to abstain from sinful life is by our chanting. Early morning, right? Hearing and chanting. That is the way. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. And the problem is that somehow people forget this sometimes. Even in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I mean, this devotee, this Brahmin, was with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveling, and he became attracted to some kind of gypsy, right, group, women, this and that. They're trying to seduce him. He became attracted. Lord Chaitanya said he came there and he dragged him by his hair back, by his shika, right? So, and then even after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, there's this devotee, Narahari Chakravarti. He wrote a book. And in this book, he's explaining what to do when your guru falls into Maya. This is in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, like after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's days. It wasn't some Sahajiya writing this book. This is a great Vaishnava Acharya writing this book, explaining what to do when your guru falls in Maya. When he becomes bewildered by pride, when he becomes bewildered by desire for fame and money, or when he falls into sense gratification, says you should go to him in a secluded place and then try to encourage him and try to get him back on the path. And then if he still continues to be in Maya, then okay, you reject him and you accept a Krishna conscious spiritual master. But the point being is that the problem of Maya is not only a modern day ISKCON thing. Even gurus fallen into Maya. It's not a modern day ISKCON thing. It's been happening for a long time since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime, this person who was traveling with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I mean, he wasn't some blockhead, karmi, right? He was a devotee. And he was also recommended by Nityananda Prabhu to travel with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Still, he fell into Maya. So, and also it's not just happening in ISKCON, and it's also happening in other traditions. I mean, it's happened in every tradition. The problem of Maya is universal. Just like, for example, when all these Buddhist monks from Tibet, they first started coming to America, and they were renounced. They were peaceful. They were very and absorbed in meditation, right? Monks, Buddhist monks, and they came to America, and they came to California, and they just one after the other, literally one after the other, falling down with running off with American Southern California girls, one after the other. So then they asked Dalai Lama, they said, how are we supposed to know who we supposed to accept as a teacher? Because you have all these Buddhist monks falling down left and right. How are we supposed to know? And then Dalai Lama said, well, you have to live with them and study them for 10 years. See if they're, So therefore, an intelligent person will note all this. Okay, all the traditions, people are having problems. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, people are having, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's people, in ISKCON, modern time, problems, right? Okay, so how do I avoid this? How do I transcend this? How do I not fall victim? So two things are very important. The chanting of the holy names, right? Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. Chanting, kirtan, japa, right? Reading of scripture. Srimad Bhagavatam class, right? Morning program, evening program. These are important things. One important thing. And the next important thing is to avoid, like the plague, like our life depends on it, which it actually does. Vaishnav aparad. Aparad, if you analyze, aparad means, Bhakti Tirtha Swami wrote some book and he described how you break the words down. It means without Radha. You commit offenses, or we commit offenses, without Radha. And without Radha, what type of Gaudiya can we claim to be? Gaudiya actually means the word. Vaishnav means devotee of Vishnu. Krishna means devotee of Krishna. And Gaudiya means devotee of Srimati Radharani. So we're Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So commit offenses and aparad, without Radha. So what type of position are we? What type of deplorable position are we in without Radha? I mean, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we're depending, right? Jai Radhe. Srila Prabhupada mentions in a purport, and in the Bhagavatam, he says that the devotees of Vrindavan, modern day devotees of Vrindavan, they're always saying Jai Radhe, right? And Srila Prabhupada says they know that Srimati Radharani is the merciful feminine counterpart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they're always glorifying her. So without Radha offenses, that's what it means. And Vaishnava aparad, out of all the offenses, actually, that's considered the worst. And it's actually worse. It's actually better to commit sinful activities than to commit Vaishnava aparad. Of course, shouldn't say, all right, well, I'm really respecting the Vaishnavas, but I'm going to go commit sinful activities. But it's an interesting point because I actually know people, a number of devotees. I'm not going to tell you their names, but I know a number of devotees who actually struggle with sinful activities, means the four. But they have a very humble, grateful service attitude, and they're very respectful to the Vaishnavas. And somehow or other they stay around. It's amazing, actually. But people who commit Vaishnava aparad, somehow or other, they don't stay around. And they're in a worse position, actually. So I'll just read something. This is from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And it's a short thing. It's about the deliverance of Jaga and Madai. And it mentions Vaishnava aparad. So, the account of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu's deliverance of the two drunken sinners, Jaga and Madai, demonstrates the harmful results of blaspheming Vaishnavas and the beneficial results possible for those who do not blaspheme. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. So it's interesting because you don't think of Jaga and Madai's deliverance having anything to do with Vaishnava aparad, the disastrous effects of it, or the benefits of not committing Vaishnava aparads. Generally, you just think of how merciful Lord Chaitanya was, Nityananda Prabhu was for delivering them. But how does Vaishnava aparad have to do anything with it? So anyways, this explains it. Every type of sin became manifest in the bodies of those two, Jaga and Madai, except the sin of blaspheming Vaishnavas. So even though that they were super sinful, they didn't blaspheme Vaishnavas. So they did have some qualification, actually. Good qualification. They happily spent their days and nights in the company of other drunkards. Therefore, they had no opportunity to blaspheme Vaishnavas. So in other words, they're just hanging out with a bunch of... like you're at the bar, right? And, of course, Vaishnavas don't go to bars, but we hope not to see Vaishnava there. But so you're just hanging out with a bunch of drunkards, and you may be blaspheming them and criticizing them and punching them or whatever. But you're not doing that to Vaishnavas, so that's what's being mentioned here. Therefore, they had no opportunity. The assembly in which Vaishnavas are blasphemed will be ruined, even if all of the religious principles are observed. The assembly in which Vaishnavas are blasphemed will be ruined, even if all other religious principles are observed. So maybe we're doing very wonderful things, right, in our lives, in our communities, but if Vaishnava aparad is committed, then it will be ruined. In other words, it's The assembly in which Vaishnavas are blasphemed will be ruined, even if all other religious principles are observed. If an assembly of sannyasis indulges in blasphemy, then that assembly is more sinful than an assembly of drunkards. A drunkard will be delivered in due course of time, but one who engages in blasphemy will never attain the goal of life. So the devotee who is struggling with sinful activities will be delivered in due course of time. But it says here, one who blasphemes Vaishnavas, they'll never attain the goal. Later, after Mahaprabhu and Nityananda delivered Jagat and Madhya, Mahaprabhu accepted all their sinful reactions, so he embraced them. Lord Chaitanya embraced them. And you could imagine or it's hard to imagine, the inconceivable blessing of being embraced by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Those who've been embraced by a great Vaishnava, their spiritual master or some other senior Vaishnava, if they're attentive and alert, they could actually, it's a spiritual experience, special. So imagine Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Lord Chaitanya embraced them, and it absorbed all their sinful reactions. So Lord Chaitanya delivered Jagat and Madhya. Mahaprabhu accepted all their sinful reactions. And what did he do with their sinful reactions after that? What did he do with them? And he said, and sent the sinful reactions to those who blaspheme Vaishnavas. All right, take all the sinful reactions of Jagat and Madhya and then send them to everybody who commits Vaishnava aparad, right? Send them there. Mahaprabhu said, "O brothers, I have accepted the sinful reactions of Jagat and Madhya. You will all see for yourselves. In order to demonstrate that there were no sins remaining in the bodies of those two, the Lord's body turned blackish. The Lord said, 'How do I look?' Advaita replied, 'You look just like Gokul Chandra, Krishna Shamasundar.' On hearing Advaita's comment, Vishwambar smiled and all the devotees chanted the name of Hari. The Lord said, 'See how these two sinners are black. Perform kirtan so that their sins take shelter in those who blaspheme me.' Hearing the Lord's words, everyone became jubilant. They then began to perform kirtan in ecstasy. So let the sins take shelter in those who commit Vaishnava aparad, the sins of Jagat and Madhya. So there was a lot. And then, actually it's my spiritual master who's quoting this, and then he said, 'I desperately pray never to commit the offense of blaspheming devotees. Rather, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, let me have unlimited mouths and unlimited lifespan to unlimitedly glorify the unlimited qualities of Krishna's devotees.' So the tongue could send us to hell. What we eat, what we speak, right? Or the tongue could elevate us to Krishna Prem, actually. Depending on, right, we're glorifying devotees, we're taking Krishna Prasadam, and then elevation. We're criticizing devotees, we're not taking Krishna Prasadam, then degradation. And what's in the mind naturally will come out of our mouth in due course of time. You can say, hey, Prabhu, we don't get any sinful reactions for thinking illy in this age. True, but keep on thinking a certain thing and then you're going to speak, right? Or you say, hey, I'm not blaspheming devotees. I'm not using my tongue for wrong things. I'm just typing, right? Or I'm just, right, on the phone criticizing. Okay, but that's also a form of communication. That also counts. There is no computer and phone in Mahaprabhu's days and the days of when the Vedic literature were written down, so we could add it. So yeah, in conclusion, devotees are fearless. Chaitanya, the spiritual master, is fearless. Devotees are fearless. They should learn to be fearless. But we do fear falling into Maya, and it's happening in so many traditions, in Mahaprabhu's time, after Mahaprabhu's time, presently. So we have to be very careful and take shelter of the holy names and avoid the offense to the Vaishnavas, and we should be good. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Hare Krishna. Okay.
when you concluded there, you just summarized your entire talk today, and it was so nice. Because when you started out, you like began with a story. It seemed like you were just kind of flowing, and then at the end, you just nailed all the points you made. So you're just really give a nice class, Balaram. It's very nice. I had a couple just quick points, so I'll just kind of move quickly through them, and there are questions for you on things you had said. One, you had just finished by saying, so what we think, we're not generating sinful reactions in the age of Kali, is it?
Well, they say in previous ages, what people thought, they actually got punished for.
Danger zone.
Means it was karmic reactions, right?
Yeah.
So they say, in Kali Yuga, you may have some bad thoughts, and you won't get credit. You won't get, bad credit for that, reactions. But other ages you would.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is that, okay, that's there, but we want to transform our consciousness and not have those thoughts. And a lot of the times if we have those thoughts, then it will, right, thinking, feeling, willing. It's a downward spiral. So
it seems fair. It's like a battle with yourself. It's like, keep it in the brain. Keep it in the brain, all right? And then we got to work on
getting rid of it.
Meditating, not attaching to those thoughts. I've heard on that same note about adding the new forms of communication in terms of expression of that the fifth regulative principle should be like limiting your internet time. I've heard that. Yeah, follow the four regulative principles, and also not internet for sense gratification. I heard someone say we should update the regs. And one note about the regs was that thinking when I was in college, years ago before I was a devotee, or like a dog who's been in a house and they never get let out, and when they run out the front door, right, they're like running in circles and smelling everything. They're like completely trying to just soak up as much of the world as they can. It's great, these regulative principles, in that the world starts to kind of like, it gets limited. Like I boga shop, so there's certain aisles I just don't go down anymore, right? It's really quite easy. There's like a few aisles that are glowing. Like here on Pacific Beach, there's very few places we as Vaishnavas can actually go and hang out, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it makes it easy, right?
Yeah.
Even with Vijay, we went on a bike ride and he's like, here's the safe path. This is where you're not going to see so many people surfing and, doing beach things. Yeah. So it's kind of easy when you follow the regs. The world sort of narrows into just a few hospitable places.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so the point I was going to say, though, is that's all kind of external. We're interacting with these objects.
When I was we were there, we're in Utah and kirtan going on stuff. I saw Jayaveda Swami there, and it was in the Utah restaurant, and then he said, Balaram, he said, good, clean fun, right? Talking about the festival. And it's true, it's good and clean, and it's spiritually fun. It's wholesome. So our options become wholesome.
This question goes a little deeper from that, in that, after a while, at least my experience, like if I walk by a restaurant that has the smell of meat, I'm like repulsed by it. But in college, I was that dog running around the front yard, there wasn't any restrictions. I was seeking out what's next. Now and that's really great that these principles we should be following, if you follow them seriously, these things become very distasteful automatically. I don't have to think about it. You just see it or have the experience. You're like, okay, I'm not with that.
Yeah.
But once we're following the regulative principles and, we're chanting and we're doing the program, then we're trying to purify the heart. So there's like these subtle emotions that we can work on, like trying not to be angry or trying to be more humble. I guess, I don't know if that's something you want to talk about. Like, we're no longer following these gross rules, right? It's subtle. Yeah. So how do we start to work on the subtle things we want to clean up in us? Because it's so easy. Don't do this. Don't put your hand in the cookie jar. Yeah. But now I'm stuck with me. Yeah. And I can even think whatever I want to think now. Yeah. How do I clean myself up inside when it's on me?
Well, it's one thing is that there's the more gross things, and then there's subtle, gross dirt, subtle, more. Because
I want anger and that to be distasteful. Like when I walk by a restaurant, I would like the feeling of being distasteful, or if I'm prideful, I want to feel that disgust.
The main thing is that we engage in the different process of devotional service. We're cleansing our heart. Every day we're cleansing our heart. Here in the Bhagavatam class, it's cleansing. We should take the opportunities that we have to cleanse our heart. So that means the different activities of devotional service. Cleansing the temple, it's cleansing the heart. Going on book distribution, it's cleansing. So everything we're doing is cleansing. So we just need to keep on doing that. and be patient, because sometimes it takes a little time. Actually, practically all the time it takes time. And sometimes devotees become discouraged because they say that our consciousness, it's like going into like an attic that hasn't been cleaned for years. And then it's dark and it doesn't look so bad. Like if you ever went into a room that's not well lit, it doesn't look so bad, right? Just there's a few furniture, but if it hasn't been clean for a long time, and then you turn on the light, you're like, oh my God, this is terrible. So that's the example or this analogy with cleansing the consciousness, the room of our consciousness. In mundane consciousness, is like the lights off, right? Oh, yeah, I'm not so bad. I'm a good person, And right? I pay my taxes and I
vote.
I'm a vegan and a good citizen and smoke organic ganja and I'm a good guy, right? But then you start chanting Hare Krishna and trying to purify, right? It's like turn on the light and it's like, oh my God, there's a lot of dirt there. But we just have to continuously clean.
You can also send me and Govardhan in that attic. We'll get that. Clean most of that stuff out. Really quickly was fearless and foolish. We've heard that we need to be fearless but not foolish.
Yeah.
Do you want to? What's the difference?
Yeah, fearless but not foolish.
That came up during the beginning of the pandemic when we still should go out and preach, but it's saying be fearless, go out and preach fearlessly, but don't be foolish. Don't go out there and get
fearless means that we're not afraid to glorify Krishna. We're not afraid to speak the message as it is. We're not in fear of anything or anyone. We feel protected at the lotus feet of Krishna, right? Fearless. But foolish means that we're taking risks, but they're not intelligent. It's like to be fearless means we take intelligent risks, but to be foolish means unintelligent risks. Like if somebody's a drunkard or something, they're overcoming their addiction, right, to alcohol. They don't go and hang out at the bar. So we're trying to overcome our addiction to Maya, so we don't take unintelligent risks that will be dangerous for us. In other words, that if we engage in those unintelligent risks, that we may fall into illusion. So you have to be careful. Like, I don't know, maybe someone's attached to rock and roll, whatever, and they want to go distribute books at the concert or something. And instead of going to distribute books at the concert, they just go hang out with their old buddies, and they influence to drink some undrinkable stuff for Vaishnavas, right? And then they're just jamming out at the rock concert. But so if they know that, hey, that's not good for me, I'll go distribute books at Balboa Park or something. So it's taking intelligent risks. Means that's part of being fearless and not foolish. So.
In that.
Yeah, Prabhupada said we had two diseases when we're not enough afraid of Maya, and we can be fearless, but we shouldn't be foolish. I remember when I was a young brahmachari, we were young and foolish. we used to think that to stop people, we'd have to, we used to have flowers in Miami, so we'd bring out flowers and we'd pin the flowers on people's lapel or something. So we went to one restaurant and we used to go to the ladies that have their bikinis on. This is Florida, and would take their little strap from their bikini and pin a flower on their bikini strap.
Wow.
And Krishna Maharaj was there. He said, I can't believe you're doing that. You can't do that. They were brahmacharis. So that's an example of foolishness.
Yeah.
one last thing was about Vaishnava Aparad. I'm basically asking, kind of defining where the line is. It's so easy, the ones that are so extreme, that's clearly Aparad. But what's the attitude in a devotee where they might, I'm thinking of two specific practical things. One is if you see a devotee behaving a certain way that might be questionable and you ask another devotee, hey, what do you think about that behavior? Is that something we should be worried about? Or the other is if you're making a joke, you're trying to be funny, but you bomb, is that it? So your intention's not to be offensive, but you're kind of walking a line where you're,
Well, the tough thing is that in America, different cultures have different pros and cons. Like humor, for example, a lot of the times American humor is just dark and involves putting people down. Just go or don't go to a comedy show. Largely, it's just criticizing people. In other words, you have to make someone. You have to. What do you call Yeah. The joke has to be at somebody's expense. Anyway, some devotee. I commented on this devotee. They always post very Krishna conscious WhatsApp. What do you call? Status. Yeah, status. Very Krishna conscious. And I actually mentioned to that, like, I really appreciate how Krishna conscious you're. It's always about Krishna consciousness. Because sometimes, there'll be maybe a devotee and they're, post something kind of like, what is this? Why are they posting this? It's kind of mundane or whatever. So I said that to them. But anyways, one time they posted something. I was like, why did they post this? And they posted that I wouldn't have known it was the Grammys unless Will Smith slapped Chris Rock or whatever. And apparently, all in the news, that's what happened. And Mr. Rock, the comedian, maybe you heard about this, maybe not, but Mr. Rock, the comedian, he was up there in the stage and how the rich and famous there, and he started at somebody's expense, Mr. Will Smith's wife, criticizing her about her haircut or something. And apparently she had some disease that made her have to cut her hair, and maybe he didn't know that, but he got really mad, and he, stood up and walked on the stage and just hit him, whatever. But we're not going to get into all that social commentary. But as an example, at somebody's expense, he was criticizing and making fun, and that's all the comedy's about. So it's tough because in America, that's what it is. And after all, we grew up in America, and after all, that's what we've been seeing and watching and hearing our whole lives before becoming devotees, and it's ingrained in us. Just like in India, they have a whole different set of humor, like completely different. I mean, there's one devotee, has millions of followers on YouTube, and he tells all these jokes. A lot of times. But Americans, like, if you have Americans listen to that, they think it's not funny at all. Like there's nothing funny about it. It's like, too clean, too cheesy, too corny, as they say, right? It's just... So it's tough, because we're in that culture, tend to make fun of people. But we have to be careful, because it could have bad effects, right? It could... it's so subtle that Rupa Goswami, because you have American culture, and we'll talk about the culture of Rupa Goswami, but Rupa Goswami, he was meditating, right, in his spiritual form, and he was seeing Krishna's pastimes, and something funny happened. And he had his eyes closed, and he started to laugh. So laugh, laughing. And smile and laugh. And then his meditation broke, and he goes, why is my meditation break? In other words, why aren't I feeling the ecstasy? Why aren't I absorbed in Krishna? What happened? So then he asked somebody, why do you think that is? And then Rupa Goswami said, this Vaishnava said to Rupa Goswami, you must have offended somebody. So you should invite all the Vaishnavas for a big feast, and for whoever doesn't show up, you should understand that that's the person you offended. So then he invited everyone, and then one woman didn't show up, and she whatever, had some deformity of her body or something like that. And she thought that Rupa Goswami was laughing at her because of how she looked. And therefore, he apologized, Mataji, please forgive me. I wasn't laughing at you. I was, absorbed. Something happened. I was meditating Krishna's pastime. She said, okay, no problem. But it's interesting because he didn't even laugh at her. And still there was some reaction. So yeah, we have to be careful that we're not offending people in that way. Now, in terms of education, I mean, we may say, oh, what do you think about this devotee? They're doing something wrong. Well, it's like, sometimes why talk about it? Because we know it's wrong. There's no question that it was wrong or not. We know it's wrong. Now, maybe, to vent or to there is some value in venting, or to try to understand why a devotee is doing a particular thing, then therefore you should speak with more senior devotees, more, like Shiksha Guru types, because they're not going to turn it into a criticizing fest, laughing stock, let's put this person down opportunity. But it says for education, we may point out the faults in others. Like Shukadeva Goswami, he points out the faults of the materialists, right? What is it? Nidriya hriyate vaktyam. Anyways, he says that the materialists all day, morning and night, money making, spending, and at night wasting their time, sexual intercourse, or sleeping. And so you say, why is Shukadeva Goswami talking about these people? He's pointing out their faults. What's the use? Well, the use is education. So even amongst pointing out the faults of devotees or other spiritual groups, what to speak of materialists, for education that may be there. But we have to be careful that it is for education and not for, oh, this is making me feel very good. I feel very happy. So we have to make sure it's for education, or we may be discussing people's faults to help them. Like we may be discussing somebody's issues, somebody's faults, not for fun, but to help them. Okay, these are the problems, this is what's going on, this is what's going on psychologically, we can understand. How do we help this person? Then we plan how to help, then we execute. Then that's okay. But otherwise it's, they say it's like skating on thin ice, right? So what does that mean? The ice is thin, right? Got a lot of ice skating in Russia. They got parks where there's just big skate parks, right, full of ice. So you're skating on thin ice. The water's freezing below. You could actually die from the freezing water. So skating means you just break very easily, fall in, get stuck. I mean, I don't know, maybe get shocked so much that you can't move, freeze to death. So skating on thin ice. All right. I'm not happy now.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just want to let you know there is one question pending on the Zoom.
Okay. I think we could turn that off, right? Okay, Vijay Krishna.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, may I?
Yes.
Prabhu, the question is, why is it that, what is the benefit of being learned in all Vedic literature?
Oh, the benefit? Okay.
Yes.
The benefit is that you know about Krishna in detail, about his pastimes. Instead of thinking about Mickey Mouse and all these other mundane characters, you could think about Krishna. That's one. And two is that we understand the process, how to become advanced, what's the goal. We understand all that. And three is we understand the pitfalls. So we understand the pitfalls, we understand the process, we understand the goal, we know about Krishna. So that's the value. And
yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.